It's the holiday season, and you may have some free time on your hands when you're not with your family, in which case, if you're like me, you may be jumping onto Modern Warfare. But for those seasoned veterans out there, perhaps the brand new players who may be getting the game for the holidays, plenty of mistakes will be made. I've been playing this franchise for over a decade and still find myself slipping into some old habits, into mistakes that can cost me a streak, cost my team a win, or something in between. So today I want to talk to you about 10 mistakes that you're making, 10 things that you're doing wrong, and how to correct them in real time, and how to turn it around to benefit your playstyle. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below if there's anything you'd suggest if you find yourself making a mistake frequently, and how you correct it, and maybe as well consider hitting that subscribe button if you haven't done so already to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare. But anyways, let's get into it. One of the big things that I find myself slipping back into is a problem of not positioning myself properly, and you may very well do this also. In which case, if you take a gunfight, there could be some stuff that you can use to your advantage, whether that be the regular environment, whether that be a pillar of concrete, whether that be some debris, whatever it is, something around you that can give you the upper hand, to give you the ability to duck in, to cover, and take that gunfight and change it how you will to better suit yourself, to predict that play style, and then to be able to counter it and turn it on the enemy. That's something that's always been tough in real time to recognize because oftentimes it's a split-second decision. But if you know somebody's going to be rounding that corner, make sure that you have the upper hand in terms of maybe reducing the amount of shots they'd be able to put in your body. If there's, say, maybe a van or a barrel, put it in between you and them so that you have the ability to shoot, but they may not. Use that environment to your advantage. Another big one is to not stay in one position too long. Now, yes, this is definitely something that I absolutely hate camping, but not only is it something that camping is annoying as ever, this will actually help you avoid getting killed in a lot of situations. Positioning yourself is one thing, using that environment to your advantage, but another is staying there for way too long. You want to be unpredictable in gunfights. That's how you win a lot of them, by being able to take that situation and dictate it, be the player that controls that situation. And sure, you can control some aspects if you are stationary, but being unpredictable, not allowing your enemies to be able to know what you're going to do, that to me is the biggest control out of all of it. So staying in the same location is predictable, and from experience, I've hunted down plenty of players staying in one location because I know to expect them. But if they somehow just dip out and I'm going for that same location and they may have shifted their positioning slightly, chances are they'd have the upper hand on me instead of the other way around. Another big one this year is your minimap, not paying attention to it, not reading your minimap. And while not everything this year is on the minimap, such as your gunfire, it's still a huge tool that you should be utilizing, as it allows you to gain that knowledge more so than anything about the map and the play on it. While you can't necessarily see your enemies where they are in their gunshots outside of ground war on the minimap, you can see where your enemy team is not, which is oftentimes just as telling, if not more telling. Oftentimes, if your team is not on the minimap or around you on the minimap, that's usually where the enemies will be. So prepare for a gunfight accordingly. This will allow you to have that possible upper hand on players you may encounter, where they may just be running aimlessly and run right into you, already ready for a gunfight. One thing though is be careful not to solely focus on this though. There needs to be a balance, because if you're just watching that minimap up in your left corner, you may have some very good peripheral vision, sure, but there could always still be that guy who has Ghost that just pops out and takes you out. So you could think you're on a hot flank and you could think that nobody's going to get in your way, but somebody definitely could. So you need to find that balance between using it and not using it too much and solely just chasing the dots, as it's been referred to, but more so chasing the empty space. Another big one is to pinpoint your sensitivity. A lot of people that I know will not have this mastered, they will not have it down. Sensitivities are not universal. I've played on a 9/9 sensitivity for so long that it feels natural to me, but when I tell most people about it, they're like, wow, that's pretty high. That's a little absurd. But then I also get the replies occasionally where people are like, wait, 9/9 is actually low. So it's going to differ depending on your play, how you feel, your skill, what you've used in the past, oftentimes even your monitor or TV that you're playing on. There's so many variables that are up in the air that only you know, and so therefore you need to take the time to understand and master them so that your aim can be precise. I'd suggest doing this by going into a private match and messing around with various sensitivities and trying to snap onto locations or even bots. But at the same time, find what's comfortable and play with it. messing around with it too much after you've played with a certain amount doesn't really do you any favors either. Meaning that if you play on, say, 6-6 for a while and then decide, hey, I want to try up to 9-9, you're going to mess up what feels natural to you and also what you're going to be able to play around with. So find something that works for you, find that sweet spot, because not every single one is going to be the same. Another big mistake that I see myself and others making constantly comes down to your shot centering and crosshair placement, being improper with how you line those up in any capacity. So the big thing that you want to watch out for is that center dot in between your crosshair. That is something that you have the north, south, east, and west dashes, but in the very center you end up having that white dot, which showcases the true center of where you're going to be shooting, or in most cases should. Sometimes there are cases where that isn't necessarily entirely the true center, but that's a different story for a different day, bugs aside. But when you take this into consideration, that's where you're going to be whenever you aim down sight. That's where your main center is going to be if you hip fire. And so having the ability to place that and be able to, say, round corners at chest height of an enemy, at head height of an enemy, and having that quick little leg up if you want to ADS is absolutely crucial. It helps out tremendously. Personally, the biggest eye-opener that I ever had with this scenario wasn't even in Call of Duty. It was whenever I was into CSGO big time, and that was the big eye-opener for me because you'd see how impossible it can be without proper crosshair placement. Honestly, when I started CSGO and at that time, when I played COD, I felt that my weapon model was oftentimes in my view, and I'd like to have it out of the way, so I'd aim a little bit lower, and therefore, whenever it came around to being accurate and snapping onto enemies, that split second that I'd have to ADS and then adjust, or in the case of CSGO, not ADS, that would end up getting me killed. So to be able to adjust and have that crosshair placement a little more proper, a little higher, and being able to predict said gunfights, that's absolutely huge and can 100% help you out in almost any gunfight. And compounding off of that, the next issue I see a lot of players having within Modern Warfare is not utilizing headshot multipliers enough. So aiming higher and aiming for those headshots is something you definitely want to do. Headshots in Call of Duty have always been a big thing, but not as much as in Modern Warfare. The headshot multiplier is higher for a large number of the weapons and therefore can kill quicker, a lot of times 2 shots. So when you want to aim for a player, don't aim for the stomach and maybe upper chest, aim for upper chest at the very bare minimum, so that therefore whenever you take those shots of yours, your recoil will naturally bring that weapon up. Or one thing that's also kind of relevant within this game is something that's been around for years, are view kick headshots, where you end up flinching when you're shot by an enemy and it skyrockets your shot a little bit higher. And so therefore, whereas you may have been on that lower chest, you get shot once in a gunfight and your model kicks up immediately to their head. That's something that helps out greatly. So having that upper chest as your main primary target helps out so much. Another mistake I often see is players not learning the maps to their entirety. I'm not talking about simply knowing where you spawn at the very beginning or knowing some different angles and different routes to get to B flag or something like that. I'm talking more on a detailed level and being able to predict gunfights, being able to outsmart players by simply utilizing your own map knowledge. One big thing is the predictive map flow. Being able to pre-fire is absolutely key in a lot of situations. If you know that there's an empty space on your minimap where players are, like we mentioned, that's oftentimes where enemies will be. And so therefore, if you take a gunfight, maybe you hear something in your headset of a player behind you, you can immediately start to pre-fire an entry route into said area that you may be in. Things like that are absolutely imperative to be able to predict where players will be coming from, where they'll be going, so that you can get that drop on players. Additionally, there's a lot of places that are different jump spots around the map that are absolutely fantastic. Obviously, each map has a handful of these, so I'm not going to go through all of them just to save guys the time, but things like the Krovnik Farmlands Seaside Window by Hay Bales, that's a fantastic place to be able to take out players who are usually camping in Upper C, watching those main 4 entrances on the bottom. Things like Piccadilly, there's a jump spot in which you can jump up into the upper shoe store instead of having to fight your way up through what may be a player or two camping at the top of the stairs with claymores or just mounted on the wall over there. Additionally, things like Karst River Quarry has a nice jump into B flag window from the roof side where you can jump in, and players do not expect that at all because you either have to enter from the upper portions of B or the lower portions of B. You don't really find too many entryways where that middle ground is utilized. Players don't expect that, so be able to take advantage of that and use it to your advantage. Learn those flanking routes, how to get around enemies, learn how to predict the map flow and where you may expect players to be coming from, because it will help you out greatly. After that, another big thing is undervaluing key attachments. There's plenty of attachments for specific weapons or even universal that really should be considered given various types of playstyles. almost all the time. Things like your skeleton stock, even though post-patch it is a little bit nerfed comparative to where it was about a week ago, it's still fantastic and offers more benefits than other stocks in its category, but is often overlooked sometimes. Sleight of hand is a fantastic weapon perk that allows you to get back into the action as soon as possible when you have to reload. 10mm rounds on the MP5 make it worlds better. The M16 Grenadier barrel for the M4 offers the best weapon in the game, the ability to have an even further damage range. So things like that, there's a ton of attachments for every single weapon, but know each one and not necessarily study, but at least be able to recognize that some are 100% more favorable on some weapons than others and should totally be considered. Another mistake I see constantly, and is one that you will almost certainly see in every single game you come across, are players not playing the objective. Sure, if it's TDM or something like that, then of course you're going for kills. That's the only thing you want to do because that's how you win the game. But if you're playing domination, jump on that flag, take out some enemies, and the action will often come to you in that regard. Headquarters, same thing. Hardpoint, same thing. Playing objective modes and playing for that win not only brings the action to you, but also helps you be able to secure the win for your team. Playing objectively puts you in the thick of it, but also helps out the overall goal for your team. Kind of a standard one, but I'm sure that you come across that enough to realize that maybe some more people do need to play the objective. Then finally, the last thing that I will say is playing solo is another big mistake here. I'm primarily a solo player, have been for absolute ages, but Modern Warfare is the one game that I think is the first time that I've played with a party well more than I've played solo. This game isn't suited towards solo play and really is something that, whether or not it explicitly says it or tries to push you in that direction, communication is absolutely key. And so therefore, if you don't have a teammate, if you don't have somebody in game chat talking with you, you can't communicate where you just died. You can't communicate map rotations. You can't communicate where an enemy may be overlooking with a sniper rifle. That kind of brings it to the more the merrier. If you can find a full team and play with them, communicate, chances are you're going to win the majority of, if not almost all of the games that you end up playing in public matches. If you play solo, it might be a little bit tougher to do that. So find yourself a good squad, find yourself some friends that are on at the same time as you, and jump in and try and communicate the best you can so that you can end up not only doing well personally, but also as a team winning more games. But all in all, that is 10 mistakes that you may or may not be making in Modern Warfare and how to correct them. Honestly, I'm still guilty of almost all of these, so please don't by any means take this as a I know everything I'm doing, do it this way sort of video. Just wanted to put out some tips here for you guys, and especially if there are some people that picked it up for Christmas and maybe newer, it's definitely a game that's going to take some time to learn and to get into. So that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Is there anything in particular that you guys would like to add to this list, subtract to it, whatever it may be? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff we got you covered here on the channel. So if any of that interests you, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to check out the conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But other than that, thank you guys all so much for watching. Mine is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.